I have uploaded a new illustration that I've drawn to my resource page, and it's called Family Trees. And I've had a request from a friend of mine to explain a little more about the early Christians I've been referring to in some of my videos. And this chart, I drew it, filled it in, and basically it traces premillennialism and amillennialism. Premillennialism is the blue column on the left, and amillennialism, the red or pinkish column on the right. And what I wanted to show is that premillennialism traces back to the Abrahamic and Davidic covenants, and we believe that God is going to fulfill those covenants. And then you have Judaism, of course, holding this belief through the years that God will fulfill his covenants and keep his promises. And then you have the apostles, who were Jews and believed that God would keep his covenant promises to Israel, and they were premillennial, and I plan on making videos about each of them, at least Paul, John, and Peter, and maybe others in time. And then we get to the early Christians, and I drew a line you see there where I say there's a dividing line here between canonical and non-canonical. So the Old Testament history is premillennial entirely. There is no Old Testament history for amillennialism at all. Then we get into the early church, and we find that they all were premillennial in the earliest period. 4 of them knew the apostles personally. 4 of them that we can quote from. That's Papias, Polycarp, and Ignatius. They knew John, and we can quote from them today, their writings. Of course, Papias, his writings are lost, but quotes of him are preserved in other writings, so we get quotes out of his writings that we can read from. And then Clement of Rome, and he was friends with Paul and Peter. So you have 4 right there who knew the apostles. You have other important early Christians, Justin Martyr, and you have the Epistle of Barnabas, AD 100 approximately. It's a very early book, maybe a little earlier than that, and so forth. You'll see the dates next to the names. That's important. And there is a line of 4 of these men that's real important if you look at the Apostle John and follow down to Polycarp, and from Polycarp to Irenaeus, and from Irenaeus to Hippolytus. That chain of men there, they were taught by each other down the line there. So that's a chain right back to an apostle. These men have very special apologetic significance. Polycarp, Irenaeus, and Hippolytus. So these are the kinds of things to know about and to see the apologetic significance. Tertullian, another important early Christian, premillennial. He was a Montanist, however, but this is important. And what's also important is to understand the origin of the amillennial view. And as I said, it has no Old Testament history. Its history comes from Greek philosophy and Gnosticism. Gnosticism began introducing non-Christian heresies in the guise of Christianity, and they denied resurrection and the kingdom. And we find this teaching in Origen, then, who I have marked here as the first quote-unquote orthodox amillennialist. I say that because before him, really, it was just Gnosticism, it was heresy. Origen, though, is regarded as an early church father. And he was, in line with the Gnostic eschatology. So that's really the start of amillennialism there. And I show other prominent amillennialists. These are the earliest amillennialists here. These are the earliest ones who weren't just straight up Gnostic heretics, that is. And what you'll notice in my videos and in this chart, you see that I tend to stop quoting right around Tertullian and Hippolytus of Rome. There's a reason for that. It's because that's about the time we see Origen come on the scene, introducing amillennial apostasy. So to me, that's a good time right there to sort of mark a line off and regard anything after that time as of little value apologetically, because by that time, of course, we have heresy creeping in. There's other premillennialists that I could list in this chart. This isn't exhaustive. This is, however, exhaustive of the amillennial side. These are their big guns there. The earliest ones, there they are. Origen. Then you have Dionysius and Caius. You have Eusebius. And Augustine is really the man that a lot of amillennialists like to refer to because, he's just somewhat respectable, I guess. They wouldn't want you to really know that the doctrine comes through Origen. He taught other heretical ideas, Origen. Amillennialism wasn't the only one. And you'll see the premillennial line basically tapers off and nearly vanishes because this amillennial doctrine took over, and Roman Catholicism was born out of this amillennialism, this idea that the church is to dominate and rule over the earth as the kingdom of God. And so after Augustine on down to the time of the Reformation, I just have a big gold plaque at the Roman Catholic Kingdom. This is part of amillennial history. And really, if you're an amillennialist, you have to figure out why you're not in the Roman Catholic Church. They're your kingdom. So you better get on back over there to Rome, where you belong. But after Luther, I have the reemergence of premillennialism, and that is seen in various men. I put Cotton Mather here, John Darby, the man who systematized dispensational theology, he and the Plymouth Brethren. And I put Charles Spurgeon, and there's others. There's a lot of interesting men you could put over here, like Isaac Newton, for example. And then on the millennial side, now they have some big guns here, and this is why a lot of people are amillennialists today. You have men like Martin Luther that held it, and then this is the big one, John Calvin. Because John Calvin was amillennial, that's the number one reason that so many people today still hold to this view, because their favorite teacher held it. And we have Theodore Beza. You could list a whole lot more here. But this chart just gives you an idea of the men I've been referring to. And I hope it helps put into perspective the early church belief, the Premillennialism held, the Ante-Nicene Chiliasm, how it tapered off as a opposing view, an apostate view emerged, which gets its concepts from Gnosticism. I'm going to be making plenty of videos on that in the future, showing that the early church condemning Gnosticism, you could just might as well fill it in with Amillennialism because they're condemning the same thing. So I hope this has been helpful. This chart is available on my resource page. If you go there and click Illustrations and click the Family Tree, the image is available there for you, and you can simply right-click on it and save it to your images on your computer. You can pull it up, print it out, use it however you like. I hope this has been helpful. I'll see you next time.